there will be assignments, and these assignments are really interview questions. Okay? Alright, so we talk about the goals of business analysis. Why do we do business analysis? And we, all of us remember, everyone on the call remember why we do business analysis? Yes, no, maybe. Okay. So we know why we do it. And as a business analyst, what are our deliverables? At the end of the year, how does our manager review our performance? Our performance is reviewed based on our deliverables throughout the project. Remember, we said the project there are 6 phases in the project life cycle. Everyone remember the project life cycle? Right. So there's 6 phases of the project life cycle. There are things that we are supposed to be doing throughout the project life cycle, right? And what are those things? Because that is what we will be evaluated against, right? How did we manage those activities? How did we do those outputs, right? What was the, how good were the outputs, right? So we are evaluated based on those deliverables. On the left-hand side where you see project phases, you notice the names of the phases are slightly different. Remember, just because the project life cycle says that there should be only 6 phases, there should be 6 phases, doesn't mean that every company must adhere exactly to that, right? If you ever stick to the exact ingredients, exact proportions, what is called for in a recipe, when you download one? No, right? You tweak it to your own taste, doesn't it? Don't you? Right. The same here. So project phase, on the left-hand side, you will see some 7 boxes. What do they mean? Well, the strategy and planning, right? This company broke it down into concept and business case. How or why? Strategy, right? In order for you to strategize on something, you must have a concept first, right? What do you want to build? Or what is your product? What is the problem that you're trying to solve for? Yes or no? You must have a concept of the solution, correct? Yes, that's the concept of a solution. Okay, there's somebody that is not muted. Please mute yourselves. It doesn't matter whether you are using your landline or your computer. Okay, so the strategy has been renamed as concept here. Planning. Why do you think we put together a plan? Why? Because the plan is going to be shared with the stakeholders, right? Somebody must approve it. Even though I am the vice president of sales, and yes, I have budget, but before I use that money, right, they're always in the corporate world, there are checks and balances. Somebody must approve it. Otherwise, I could do fraud. I could use that money to my own personal gain. I could say I'm going to build this solution and actually just, write out checks to my own personal account, right? So what typically happens in the corporate world is you put together a plan so that you can present it to your board of directors, okay, or to the vice president, and show them this is how you will meet your objectives. Are you clear, everyone? Does that not sound similar to something what we do for the bank? When we ask for a loan, do we not tell them what is our current salary, what are our current, liabilities, how do we plan to pay off in this X number of years? Is there anybody else having audio issues? Because I haven't even moved. Okay. That could be Nitya, and somebody was unmuted a couple of minutes ago. I don't know who it was when I called out. Okay? Now, if it happens again, you know what? I will log out and dial back in. Let me know. If it happens with a couple of you, the minute anyone has, please ask yourselves, each other, is anyone else having the same issue? If we find 3 of you saying yes, all of you or 3 of you are having audio issues, I will dial back in. Okay? But the same applies. If once I've done it, maybe all of you can also do it. So we'll try that. Typically, this doesn't happen. Yes, Yadagiri, we can do it. It's just that it will be a waste of time. I mean, it will take up a lot of time, right? So when it happens again, Srinivas, let me know. All right, or anybody else. All right. So we put together a business case. Our loan application is exactly what? It's not just application, is it? Why do we have to tell out what is, how much do we have in savings? How much do we, do we make per year? How much do we save per year? Why? What do you think the underwriters are doing? They're looking to see if you are a credit risk or not, right? So basically, when we put together our application, when we say that we make so much, this is what we have in savings, this is how we, plan to pay off in the next 5 years, 10 years. We're making a business case, right? Yes or no? Right? So the planning piece can also sometimes be referred to as the business case, correct? Requirements gathering is the same as analyze. What is it that you need to do in order to build the solution, right? So it is analyze. It may be called requirements gathering, or it can be called analyze. Then we have design, which is a thing. Development is synonymous with build, correct? Testing, which we said in deployment we do testing, is the same as validate. When you test, you validate that this is working correct. Yes or no? And once you have put something into production, right, you've implemented it, then you must always have to maintain it, right? So implementation goes along with operations and maintenance, correct? So different companies, there is no hard and fast rule that says you can only use these sales names. You can call them something different. You can break them down into more than one phase. It's up to you. The only difference is the more phases you have, the longer it takes. Why? Because at the end of every phase, there's supposed to be an evaluation. Okay? An evaluation of how are things how are things proceeding? What is the progress on the project so far? Right? So you must evaluate at the end of every phase. So if you have 10 evaluations, right, then it will take more time than if you had 4 evaluations, correct? Because even the evaluation piece takes time. Yes or no, guys? Alright? So on the left hand side, you see the project phases. And you will see the deliverables in bubbles in the main area. So if the bubble is horizontal, it means it's this deliverable spans this particular phase. If it is vertical, it means this deliverable is across multiple phases. Are you clear? If the bubble overlaps, it means that in order to do one or the other, you need to do the other thing as well. So there's a dependency. For example, if you see scope definition and stakeholder management, there's an overlap. You cannot define scope unless you talk to your stakeholders. Because in true sense, it is the stakeholders that define it for you. However, we help them define it and we document it. So really the burden is on us. If we don't ask the right questions, then we don't get, do you think we get the right answers? No. Right? So we must ask the right questions, hence it is our responsibility. Alright? So anywhere you see an overlap, it means that there is a dependency on an activity. So the first one, right, we'll just think of concept and business case as one and the same. Right? One phase. Scope definition. What did we say? If you don't know the boundaries of the project, can you do anything? Can you go beyond that phase? No. So scope, we must define scope first. That's right. Now, in order to define scope, we must talk to our stakeholders. Business sponsors are also stakeholders, correct? So we must talk to stakeholders. We must manage those stakeholders, right? So there is this overlap. Now, while we are understanding our scope, we must also understand what are the policies and procedures and tools and processes that are being used by the company currently. Yes or no? How else will we find out what is the problem and how can I fix it? Well, let me ask you this. Some of you right now, we have problems with the internet, we have problems with Internet Explorer or whatever, Microsoft versions and whatnot. If you're already on the latest version and you're still having problems, can we solve it? Any of you called help desk ever? Customer support? Do they ask you what version are you running on? Do you know what is? Yes, right? Why? Because we must know what is the current environment. If I don't know that, I don't know what is causing the problem. Will the next version help you or not, right? Is it compatible with what if I use .NET, I'm a .NET platform. Can I build a Java program? Do you think that will work? If you have a MacBook, can you download Microsoft products? No, right? So you must always know what are the current policies, procedures, processes, and tools that are used by this department or by the company in general to be able to evaluate, well, how can we solve this problem, right? And it doesn't have to be software, it can be anything. So that is called enterprise architecture. And that enterprise architecture, remember, it is based on your scope, right? And it also, once you know that, it gives you a better understanding of what your requirement will be. Yes or no? Okay. So enterprise architecture is part of your planning and strategy and gathering requirements. Something that you do, right, in the first two phases. Are you clear? Okay. Now let's talk about the bubble that's called requirements management. Even when you begin a project, remember the sponsor knows what kind of solution he is looking for at a very high level. We may not know how to implement it, but he does know what he wants, yes or no? Now we do know at a high level what our requirements are. And eventually, right, we will analyze those requirements, find out how to get it done, right? What else do we need, what are the details that need to be taken care of. And we are still managing our requirements through the analysis phase. Those same requirements must be designed for, right? So we are managing those requirements through the design phase. We have to ensure that our requirements, whatever we ask for, is actually the one that is being built, right? So we're managing the same requirements through the build or development phase. The very same requirements are also being tested, right? So again, managing it through validate phase, and the very same requirements, right, must be implemented and must be maintained until the end of the project. Yes, no, maybe. So we are managing requirements throughout the entire project life cycle. Are you clear? Now, while you have requirements, you also build processes. Okay, Yatagiri, I will dive back in. Okay, let me finish the two boxes, the two bubbles, and then I'll dive back in. So while we are gathering the requirements and building the requirements, we must also develop a process on how this solution is going to be used. Right? Yes or no? Do you think GE has built a refrigerator without knowing who's going to be using it and how? No, right? We have business processes that need to be developed, right? How, if something goes wrong, then who should the customer call? If one of the parts are broken, then how do we replace the parts? All those processes must also be figured out, correct? The process for placing an order. Right? So different pieces, guys. So we always must develop the processes. Now, when you develop the processes, as you know, to get to know your requirements better, right? You must know, well, how are people going to use this? Correct? Yes, no, maybe. All right, so we must always develop the processes. Now, in order for us to develop the processes, we must know our requirements. In order to develop our processes, we must know what are the current processes and tools, right? Policies and procedures. We must also talk to our stakeholders, because ultimately there is a process, right? We're asking those questions, but ultimately it is them defining it. We are documenting it, right? After we've asked those questions, so we are more of a detective. We ask the questions, we get answers. If we ask wrong questions, we get wrong answers, right? Once we have those answers, we document them. So it's not as if we work as a secretary, but look at yourself as a cop. Everyone clear? Okay. Then we come to the last bubble. Now, much though we'd like, guys, to say that we've made up our mind, this is what we want. In reality, we really change our mind, okay? And we change our mind after we've said, this is what I want. How many of you knew what you wanted, went to the mall and picked something else? Or you knew this is what you wanted, because obviously you went to the sitting room, you tried it on, you paid the bill, you came home, and then you realized, well, you know what, I don't want it anymore. I just got one honest answer. How about the others? Right? Sometimes, very nice. So that happens in the corporate world as well. We gather requirements. Oh yes, this is what I want. We go through design, no, we're perfectly fine. And then, all of a sudden, while it's being developed, business stakeholders will come back and, well, wait a minute, I think we forgot this piece. Can we change it here, right? Can we add this as well? Okay? Or no, this is not what I meant I wanted. I meant something else. What do we do then? Right? Ideally, and this is part of what we will learn at SDLC also, ideally, once you started on, right? Once you look at it this way, if you were taking the road from point A to point B and you change your mind and say, well, now I want to go travel by air, you really turn back and go drive to an airport and take the flight. No. If you're already on road, then you continue down the path, correct? And that is how it should be. I mean, come on, you're wasting time and money. But in reality, it's not possible. Why? Because ultimately the goals and objectives are very important. There's no point in down a path that is totally doomed, right? So even though it's not ideal, we still have changes. The changes typically apply right after, and it can happen right after the analysis phase. But, and that is why if you notice, it is right at the cusp, it's a little bit in the design, it's right there. So it can happen at the design phase or beyond. Alright? So we will always have some change. When that change happens, it is the stakeholders that will come back to you and say, oh, you know what, we forgot this, we need to add this, we need to modify this, right? We need to enhance it. And when they do that, the business processes will change. Alright? When the business processes change, we must manage the overall change. How it happens and who's taking care of it. So how we manage that change is also our deliverable. It's one of our responsibilities. Are you clear? Guys, this slide is very, very, very important. We'll always refer to it as the green slide with bubbles on it. Okay? Alright, so it is almost 15 past the hour, right? It's going to be 10:15. What I'm going to do is give you a quick 5-minute break so that I can dial back in. All of you, if you got to grab yourself a bottle of water or whatever, please use this time to do that. Okay? And I will be back in less than 5, but if anything, 5 minutes. Alright guys, is this any better now? Okay. Alright, on to our next slide. Hopefully everyone is back. Is there anybody who is missing? No? Alright. So, we have these deliverables. In order to do these deliverables, right, we must do certain tasks and activities. Remember, we said business analysis is a set of tasks and techniques, right? Yes, no, maybe. Yesterday's class, right? So we've got to do certain tasks. Those tasks are enterprise analysis, requirements planning and management, requirements gathering or elicitation, requirements analysis, requirements documentation, requirements communication, requirements validation. These are the critical tasks that we do throughout the project life cycle. It doesn't matter whether the project is an IT project or a non-IT project, you always do these tasks. In order to do these tasks, there are certain techniques. Now there are more techniques, but that we will learn about later. But just for these tasks, we have more techniques. So you must remember the tasks that are listed here. Those tasks are also called sub-disciplines. Are you clear? The sub-disciplines are more of a technical term. Anytime you're asked, you're probably going to be asked, what are the tasks that are completed by a business analyst? If you notice, you will see a lot of requirements, related tasks. Why is that? If you go back to our previous slide, all of this, there was an overlap with requirements. Yes or no? Again, requirements is something that you do throughout the project life cycle. Requirements management and stakeholder management, right? Now, stakeholder management is not exactly a task. You are gathering the requirements, you're defining. Anytime you do anything, it is always in, you in communication with your stakeholder. You can't get the information all by yourself, can you? Okay? So, all the sub-disciplines that are listed here, most of them have something to do with requirements. Always bearing in mind that you must always, talk to your stakeholders. That is where you get your information. Enterprise analysis. Well, in order for you to understand the scope, right, we must first figure out why are we doing this project? What is the driver of this project? Okay? And we will learn about a technique in the later slides. So why are we doing this project? What is the reason? Guys, please remember to mute yourself. what is the reason why we're doing it, right? And so there's a difference, driver and reason. Driver can be anything. What if there's a new regulation, right? State law, federal law. And what is the objective? What is the mission? What is the strategic direction that we are trying to go? What are our goals? In order to do, once you've understood this, then what next? You must figure out what are the possible options that you have, that you can, explore to solve this problem or to meet the objectives. Once you have those possible options, you must first figure out which of those options are viable. How do you find out what is viable? You must first understand how much will each option cost you, how long will each option take. Then you've got to evaluate, well, does this meet what my business sponsor had in mind? Right? One of the options may be $500,000. When the business owner has said he only can spend $300,000 on it, do you think that option is viable? I said if one of the options will cost you $500,000, right, and your business owner has said that he can only spend up to $300,000 to build the solution, do you think that solution, that option is viable? No, right? So we must figure out what is the cost, right? How long will each option take? And then we must compare all the options, right, to each other. Which one is a better option? Now, just because we have an option that is really cheap doesn't mean that it is the best option, right? Do you always buy the cheapest product that's on the shelf? No, right? Because there are other things that you must factor in. Right? Sometimes it's the brand name, sometimes it is customer feedback. Not all appliances from GE or Sony products are well known, right? Sometimes there are customer reviews that are not so good. Yes or no? Correct? So we must have that, right? We must have all these options, and then we will compare. We will do a feasibility study. Which of these options are more feasible, right? Once you do that, you can narrow down the field. So if you had 10 options, you may narrow it down to 3. 3 options will meet all your criteria. Now, which one is the best option? You figure that out by identifying what value will each opportunity bring you, right? Each option. What are the new business opportunities that will be available? Remember, there's always some positives and negatives, right? Some things are more desirable than others. If you have a solution, some bring bigger benefit than others. Yes or no? So we must understand the benefits of each of those solutions. Identify the new business opportunities, right? And what is the scope of these opportunities? Are we talking about, these benefits will only happen in the next 6 months, or we will be able to see it or they will apply for the next 3 years, right? You must understand the size of it, correct? Once you've done that, then you can actually narrow down, right? You can find you can figure out which one of these options is the best option. So yes, 3 of them were feasible, but of the 3, you can only choose one, right? So based on your benefits, your new opportunities, you must identify that one, right? So you will put together a business case. Why? You've already done that. If you do your cost-benefit analysis, you're doing a return on investment, right? This option is going to cost me $300,000, but I'm going to gain my benefit over the next 3 years is going to be $1.5 million. Is that not a business case? Yes or no? And the same applies. Remember, every option has its pros and cons, right? So even the bank will want to know, well, if we go with this, what are the risks? Do you think the stakeholders will also want to know? Or the board of directors will also want to know what are the risks? Yes. So if and when we do our scope definition, right, we must also put together a risk analysis. What are the risks associated with each of these options, and how, or the option that you have chosen, and how do you plan to mitigate those? Mitigate meaning, how do you plan to, what is your backup plan? Right? How do you take care of those risks? Are you clear? Now, once you have done all of it, do you or do you not know the scope of your effort? How big or small it is? What will it entail? What are the options? To what, what are you building? You also know the why, right? But does this define your scope? No answer. Yes, no, maybe, guys. Okay? A part of this is also your enterprise architecture, isn't it? Because when you understand the needs, when you're looking at why are we doing it, what are the objectives, you are also finding out what are the current processes that are in place, yes or no? Because the options that you whittled down to, right, those are based on some of that processes and tools and policies and guidelines and whatnot, right? If one of the solutions is a Microsoft product, but I have a Mac environment, is it really a viable option? No. So do you think enterprise architecture, when you do enterprise analysis, that you also, this task also feeds enterprise architecture? Yes or no, guys? Alright? So, and there's more, but I'm just saying that this is one of the tasks that you do. Okay? Next, requirement planning and management. Now, before you even get to requirements gathering and analysis, you must have an idea of how do you plan on gathering those requirements, right? Why? Who can tell me why? Because there's so many stakeholders. Every person responds differently. You want to get all the information, right? But do you think, all of you have siblings, some of you have kids. Do you think that the same rule that applies to one sibling or one child applies to the other? No. You must have a plan, right? How are you going to gather those requirements? How are you going to manage those requirements? What is the process that you will follow? Okay? How are you going to, once you have these requirements, what does it mean when we say manage them? Right? What are you going to do with these requirements? Right? So you must have a plan. Again, there are different techniques to do this, but we are just talking about the task for now. Does the task make sense to everybody? Alright. Once you get into requirement gathering phase, you must gather requirements, right? And when you gather requirements, you've got to, what does it mean? You are asking people those questions. Now on this slide, yes, I do have my techniques also written down here. For the others, I have it way down. So we will go to those slides also, but for now, you must gather the requirements. How do we gather those requirements, right? Again, like we said, we've got to figure out, right, what technique will work on what people. So there are different ways to gather requirements, techniques. You can read up some information. There are a couple of stakeholders who will write it up for you, what the problem is, right, and what or how do they want it resolved. So there could be a document. You could read a book, right, or one of the training guides, or how this application works, the operating manual, and you can understand what is it doing and what is wrong. Yes or no? What if this is a project that was started 2 years ago and it was put on hold because of lack in funds, right? We did not have, because of the economy, this project was put on hold, right? Now 2 years later, we want to take up this project. We may not know if all the requirements that we listed at that time are still accurate, but we can get at least a jump start, right? So if we read up previous documentation, that is still called document analysis, correct? Even if you did not have the requirements document, if there was a scope document, do you think you would still know some of your high-level business requirements by doing that analysis? Somewhat, right? So one of the ways that you can gather requirements is by doing document analysis. There are some times where reading is not sufficient. Trust me, guys. I mean, I have worked on finance projects, okay? They can tell me this is what is wrong. They can write it down for me, but it makes no sense to me unless I see it. Then I say, oh, you want this column changed, and this one here, the calculation is this minus this times this, whatever. All right, then it makes sense. Just talk logical. Don't talk to me in accounting terms. All right? That makes no sense to me. So sometimes it is observation that will help you understand what is needed. Yes or no? Right? Same goes, processes. If you are new to the environment, I don't know, I could have worked in the retail industry or the energy industry. I have worked in the energy industry for 4 or 5 years now. I don't know every single aspect of energy domain, right? Today I could be working on the frequency department. Another day I could be working on the stability. They have so many different pieces, right? I don't know each piece. I don't know how it works. I don't know. So you have to show me, what is it doing right now? What are you wanting to change? Then it will make sense to me. Okay? So many a times, observation helps. Don't talk to me. Show it to me. And that technique is called observation. Interviews. There are some people who do not respond very well in crowds. You can talk to them on a one-on-one basis. Now this is always recommended. However, it's not always practical. Why? Because you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. When you interview another person, another stakeholder, you're giving them one-on-one time. It makes them feel important. It helps you maintain a personal relationship with that stakeholder, right? It makes that person free to talk to you. When you are in a crowd of 2 to 3 people, do you always speak your mind? When there are others there? Always? Nitya, always? Sometimes, right? But if you are talking on a one-on-one basis, then you can elaborate, you can get passionate about what is it that you want, because this is your time only. You're not sharing that hour with 3 other people, right? So if you want to talk on one subject for 45 minutes, you can, right? So interviews is one way, interviewing people is one way of gathering information, gathering the requirements, all right? However, interviewing every stakeholder individually is a very time-consuming process. Yes, it has merits, but not all projects allow that kind of leeway where you can interview every single stakeholder, right? So you have to be very judicious into which stakeholder can you interview. Typically, we limit it to stakeholders who are very difficult to find, right? They're always on the run, they are in meetings all day, or they are traveling. You may not be able to schedule a meeting with them when everyone else is in the room, right? So in that case, you meet with them one-on-one, and the others in another time. So, or if there's one of those stakeholders are very shy, or they clam up, they don't talk. There are some people. Have you noticed in a party or anywhere, there's some people who are very quiet at gatherings. They just don't talk. And some people who just open up. Some people who dominate the conversation, the others who are just there listening, they may not agree with it, but they don't voice their opinions either. Yes or no? Now that can happen in corporate world too. However, you can't let it slide. You can let it slide at a party or a gathering. However, you can't allow that on a project, because if you don't get this person's requirement, then do you think your requirements are complete? No. Okay? So you've got to be careful on where you or with whom you use your interview technique. And part of planning, the previous slide that we had, was figuring out which techniques to use and when, on whom. Okay? Next is brainstorming. We are thinking of a new product. We don't know what this product will do, right? We just know, for example, I can imagine when Steve Jobs and his team, right, thought of the iPhone, what were they thinking? They probably said, oh, we want a smartphone, right? And then they had this team of engineers or people or visionaries. They said, well, how do you define smart? And they probably started throwing ideas. Oh, something where if I can use this phone and just touch on it and call, that's smart to me. If I can check my emails on the same phone, it's smart for me, right? It has a touchpad, it has this, it has that. So this was brainstorming. We were all throwing ideas, right? I'm sure there were a couple of ideas that were not worth that were not even worth it. But when you're throwing ideas, you list them all on the board, and then you go through, you evaluate each idea and say, well, does this apply? What does this mean? Is this what we want to do? Does this meet our objectives? Remember, we did some enterprise analysis, right? So we will then tie down our requirements we will try to track them, link them to our objectives, and say, well, does this resonate with what we have in mind? If not, then it is not a good requirement. Okay? So brainstorming is another way of gathering requirements. Because if you come across, if you listed 15 things and of those 15 things you said, all right, these 9 make sense, then those 9 are your requirements, aren't they? Requirements workshop is yet another technique. So you know what you're building. You don't have to brainstorm. Not you, but the business knows what they want, right? So you don't have to brainstorm. However, you still need to gather the requirements. Now, if everyone knows exactly what they want, then you don't have to go through interview process or document analysis. You can gather them all in one room and say, all right, let's start the process. Where do you think the process begins? Oh, the process begins with me. All right, stakeholder. If it begins with you, walk me through the process and tell me what is it that you need in this new, solution, right? So he will talk about his requirements, and the ball passes on to the next person, right? Or the buck passes to the next one, and the next. So you gather everyone's requirements. That is a workshop. We are all working together to gather the requirements. Is it clear? Difference between brainstorming and workshop? Another is prototyping. Okay, a couple of different ways. Again, I can see Mark Zuckerberg, right? What did he do? Or a couple of others, right? There are so many amateur developers, right? They built a prototype and they sell that prototype. Have you seen recently that through, we have those science Olympiads and we have the robotics competition. What do you think happens to those that win the prize? The designs or the, formulas or whatever that wins the prize. What do you think happens to that particular model? Some company is buying it, right? So when I build that one piece, it is a scaled down version. Do you know a couple of years ago, somebody had won in the, I don't know what competition it was, where they built this remote controlled airplanes, right, that could travel long distances. And they had a camera and whatnot, right? So we always have, we've always had remote controlled cars, right? But this one was for an aircraft, and that technology was bought over by the U.S. Air Force. We have drones now, right, that fly so many miles and thousands of miles away, right? With spy cam and all the gears and whatnot. Yes or no? So initially a prototype was built, right? Then people look at this sample and say, what do they like in this sample? How can they make this work? What needs to be changed? What needs to be modified? So your prototype is your starting point of the conversation. Whatever you like is going to be a requirement for the final product, right? Prototype is really a sample, a scaled down version, alright, typically. And then what you don't like and how would you like to fix that or change that are your new requirements. Are you clear? Sure. Prototyping can be many ways, guys. Prototyping, you can do prototyping. It doesn't have to be a 3D model. It can be a 2D model as well. Here, I can build a prototype using Excel. How many of you have an iPhone? Nobody? Alright. Let's just use this one. Srinivas, does this look like your iPhone slowly? So I'm going to have all these icons, all right? I have this, I have calendar. Do you think if I were to build it slowly like this, it would make it would look like my iPhone? Yes or no, guys? I can keep adding more and more and more, right? Now this is a prototype. This is a mock-up, a 2D mock-up. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? Was it Neha who had asked this or Nitya? Yes, it is a sample model, that's right. Everyone okay? Alright. Now once you have those requirements, remember part of our analysis and planning, right? Not analysis, but what did we say here? Planning and management. How are we going to manage our requirements? Well, once you have those requirements, what are you supposed to do? You must have an idea, right, of what are you going to do with those requirements. Some companies, the PMO decides what will we do, how will we classify them, how will we prioritize them. What does that mean? Once you have those requirements, remember, requirements, we have high-level business requirements. I want to sell stuff online. Yes, okay, so what do I need? I need a website, and I need the features so that I can sell. Well, do you think that is good enough information for anybody to develop something? I need a smart telephone, a smartphone. Do you think that is enough information for anybody to develop? Remember, it's not just about the software, right? Even for your touch screen on your iPhone or your iPad, there is something, right, that allows you to do it? Yes or no? So once you have those requirements, once you have the high-level requirements, you should be. Please mute yourself. I know somebody is having problems, so they dialed out and dial back in. Else? Call in user number 6. I'm going to mute you, okay? Alright. So requirements must be grouped, right? When we say classify, we can group them by stakeholders. This set is the requirements for this stakeholder. We can group them by source, right? Sometimes the same stakeholder may be working in two different environments. So you can't group them by stakeholder, or you may have to group them by the environment, right? You may have to group them by critical, non-critical. So how do you classify those requirements? Sometimes you have to break those requirements down. So when we get into the SDLC, we learn that our requirements, business requirements, can be broken down into functional, non-functional, technical, user requirements, right? Implementation requirements. There are different kinds of requirements. How? Well, the business wants to start, they want to sell online. They want a website, right? So that is great. But what will this website do? right? So those are features of the requirement that we will require a developer to develop, right? So we have those functional requirements, right? Features of functions, right? The functions of the website. So that must be developed. In order for these functions to work, we will need servers and databases and whatnot, correct? Those are technical requirements. Now we have a website. The users, do you think you will or I will go to a website that is not secure? No. So then there are user requirements. Accuracy, right, is another requirement. Will you go to a website that is most of the time down? It hardly ever works. Is that ever going to be a popular website with you? No. So there are user requirements as well, right? Reliable, the information must be reliable. Then, in addition to that, there could be licensing requirements, right? You may be hosting information through Amazon, right? You may not be selling, like for those of you who have used Target, did you know until recently Target did not have its own website? It's sold through Amazon. How many of you were aware of that? Right. So you may have, if that is the case, you need licenses, right? You must have contracts. Any of you who bought stuff online also know that you must go through a secure a payment gateway, right? You don't talk directly to the bank, do you? Or does the website talk directly to the bank, or does it go through a secure payment gateway? I'm sure all of you who've used or have sent gifts to India, you've been redirected to a secure place, right? EBS or something. That is a payment gateway. Now, in order for that to work, do you think you need to have a contract with them? You must be licensed with them. So those contracts must be in place, right? You want your shipping, you want FedEx or UPS to pick up packages from your, from your business. Do you think you need a contract with UPS or FedEx? Yes, right? So you will have to break down your requirements even further. So classifying those requirements by requirement type can also be another way. The PMO will decide how those requirements can be classified. When the PMO leaves it onto you, then you must figure out what is the best way to classify these requirements. What is the most logical way, right? Then, once we have those requirements, remember we have 10 functional requirements. We may have 10 user requirements. Do you think all 10 are critical, important? No, right? Some are more critical or important than others. Then we have some that need to be there to support the critical requirements, right? So we must also prioritize our requirements. Why? Because that's right, rank them. Why? So that we know that when we have a solution ready, what is critical to the mission, to the project? If it's not critical to the project, then sometimes a certain level of freedom is allowed, right? It's okay. Like for example, this is what I tell my daughter, right? I've told her anything less than 95 in math and science is unacceptable. But yes, because guys, you've got to understand, my daughter, she scores a perfect 100, all right? It's not just math and science, but she scores it on all subjects. So I've told her anything less than 95 in math and science is unacceptable. But yes, I'm not going to make a big deal if she ever were to get a 92 or 93 in social studies or English, right? She must have A's, that's for sure. So this is the scale, right? The same goes. Even for a project, we must know you can't chase everything, right? You must know what is highest priority, what is the biggest ranking. Why? Because we should be able to manage our time and resources accordingly as well, right? Yes, there are two ways. Either you can take care of all the 80% of the small stuff and then save the rest of the time for the 20% of the big stuff, right? Or you can do your big stuff first. Right? So how do you figure out which is your small stuff and which is the big stuff unless you prioritize them? So again, we must know how to prioritize. There are techniques to do that as well. Okay? We will learn of those techniques again in these upcoming slides, but we should be able to prioritize. Same goes, in order for us to analyze those requirements, sometimes we must draw some models. If you haven't used any models, prototypes so far, then it will help understand the requirements if you built a prototype, correct? Or to draw some diagrams. Yes or no? That is conceptual modeling. Now, our kind of diagrams are a little different. We're not drawing, landscapes and none of that, right? Our diagrams are a little different. So we may have to use different kinds of tools. However, the concept itself of drawing models or prototypes is the same. Okay? Next, once we have analyzed our requirements, we must also look at what did we talk about? Enterprise architecture, right? What is the architecture? How can we build the new solution, right? How can we build this new solution? What processes, what tools can we reapply? What will we need new? What new stuff do we need? We've got to analyze that piece as well, right? So that must also happen. Lastly, there are two things that happen. Sometimes, have you come across when you said something 2 days, 3 days ago, and then you changed your mind and another day you said, no, you didn't want it? Or you contradicted yourself? Sometimes, right? It happens to all of us. Not on a daily basis, but yes, you probably remember it. You've changed your mind, that's okay. We have new information every single day, right? We thought we wanted it, now we don't. So in a project, while you were gathering these requirements, remember you can't have all these requirements irrespective of which technique you follow. You can't get it all in one day. There's going to be a series of different workshops or meetings or whatever technique you're using, right? So what if one person contradicts himself, right? How do you know which one is the correct one? Again, you've got to analyze, right? You've got to figure out, you've got to talk to that person, find out what exactly did he mean. Did he mean the latest one or the one before that, right? Again, another scenario that may happen is that we have two stakeholders. One said they want it, the other one said they don't want it for sure. Well, which of these two requirements stays, right? So how do you resolve such conflicts? Well, there can be a couple of ways that you can do it. Either one, you analyze it yourself, talk to the stakeholder, right? If you can't resolve it by yourself, go to your project manager and let him know that there is a conflict. The project manager will then schedule a meeting with the sponsor and the stakeholders in conflict, and they can hash it out. You may be part of that conversation. Sometimes you may not necessarily be part of that conversation. But ultimately, the outcome of that conversation is all you need, right? Yes or no? if you don't have a project manager, let's say if you are the project manager on that course, then you need to talk to the sponsor, right? Let him know that this is what's happening. You schedule that meeting. At all times, your manager should always be kept abreast of the happening. Remember, you only report to your manager, right? So you must always let your manager know how things stand. Are you clear? Okay. So we have analyzed these requirements, right? Now, where are we analyzing them? Is it all in our head? We've gathered these requirements, we've analyzed them. If it's all in my head or in my, in my notepad, does it make any sense? Does it have any value? No. Every requirement or the final, once you finish your final analysis, then the requirements must be put together in a document form, in a requirements document, right? A formal document. That document does not necessarily have to be a Word document or textual. It can be in the form of a spreadsheet. It can be in the form of a diagram. Diagrams are also models, but it can be in the form of a prototype, a 3D prototype as well. Okay? So every requirement or the final set of requirements that you have analyzed and documented or you have gathered, you must document it in one of the acceptable forms that have been specified by the PMO. These forms will be specified. Now, I'm sure all of you or some of you matrix exactly that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to share that with you. Give me just 1 minute and let me bring this up. Do you see this one, Nehal? Matrix is really a spreadsheet form. Okay? Now when we document these requirements, remember we've got to be very careful. The requirements, they must meet the 8 characteristics of a good requirement, meaning to say they must be complete. So if the business, all the business units combined together, if they gave you 30 requirements, then all 30 must be listed. If you miss one of those, then do you think the solution is going to be complete? It doesn't matter whether it's an IT solution or non-IT, do you think it will be complete? Yes, no, maybe. Let's say that you were doing a non-IT project. You were setting up a call center, right? And one of the groups, so one stakeholder said he wants an answering machine, right? So yes, we have how many phones and headsets and how many computers we want for the call center. You have all of it, but you've forgotten all about the answering machine. Do you think you will still be able to open up your call center if it's not a 24/7 facility? No, right? So your requirements must be complete. They must be very clear. What you mean, right, it must be listed very clearly. If people can't tell, right, if they don't understand your requirement, do you think they will be able to implement it, to develop that solution properly, the way you want it? No. Consistent, do not contradict. Right? If requirement number 3 says you want it and requirement number 10 says you don't want it, well, which one is the true requirement? Right? We must have resolved these concepts. Remember, that's part of what we do as analysis, right? Certifiable. Can you verify who asked for this requirement, right? And why? Can you tie it back to an objective? If you can verify that yes, this is the source of this requirement, then it is a good requirement. If no one asks for it, then why are we spending time and money and resources on building something that no one wanted? Is there any value? Yes or no? No. Chosen. Certifiable as in verified and validated, right? If you can't track it, why would we build a requirement if no one asked for it? Should we? Should we spend time and money on something that was not asked for? No. Chosen. Yes, there are many requirements, right? I gave you a whole laundry list of things that I need. But on closer inspection, not all of them meet my objectives. Only some of them meet the objectives, right? So, should I spin my wheels and try to get you everything, or just the ones that have been marked as important? Ones that will help me meet my objectives. It has to be the objective. Obviously, everything is by the stakeholders, right? Okay, it is the stakeholders that decide which is more important. We do the analysis. Alright, we ask the questions. Who does it impact? Oh yes, is it important? Yes, it is. Okay, how important? Is it critical? Is it, should have? Is it must have? Right? What is it? No, it's a nice to have. Well, then it's not as important, is it? Next, chaseable. You should be able to track every requirement backwards and forwards. What does that mean? Once you have those requirements, going backwards is tracing it to an objective. Remember, all requirements, they originate from an objective. You're trying to meet a certain goal or objective, correct? In order to meet those goals, what are you trying to build? Those are your requirements, correct? And forward, what your requirements are, those same requirements, you should be able to manage those requirements through the design and the development phase, through the testing phase, correct? So, if you are not going to chase those requirements, if you can't trace them backwards and forwards, then is it a good requirement? If you don't know what happened to this requirement, then is it a good requirement? No. Credible. So let's just assume I've given you very complete instructions on how to build the staircase to the moon. Very clear, right? Consistent. Certifiable. Yes, I am the one who gave you this requirement. Yes, it is very important. Yes, you can trace it backwards and forwards. But is it even technically possible? No. If it is not possible to build such a thing, build a solution, is it a good requirement? No. Right? Now you should have figured this out while you were doing your analysis. Correct? However, you have another chance. That's why when you start documenting, you must understand what is it that you're documenting, and does this requirement meet those 8 characteristics or not? Right? Last, clean. I can build it. I don't know how we're going to use it. I don't know how we're going to install it. Is that a good requirement? Right? For example, have any of you watched the movie Flubber? No? There was another one a long time ago. I can't remember who it was. This guy was trying to make candy, and ultimately it came out that the candy was for the pets, for dogs and cats. Okay. Now, even if you build something, right? But if you don't know how to use this solution that you built, then it is useless, right? It's like all those different applications at the App Store. There's so many applications, some of them we never download, right? Then it is not a good requirement. It's not something that you should have even spent your time and money on. Now those applications were built because maybe groups of amateurs, right, trying to get lucky. They come up with something, and if it sells, it sells, right? Otherwise, oh well. Are you clear? Now once you have these requirements, remember, part of requirements management, part of stakeholder management is also to make sure that the stakeholders agree, right? That they confirm, yes, these are the requirements, right? Do you think you may have documented it, but again, if no one reviews it, and especially in today's day and time, if you don't have the sign at the dotted line, does that piece of paper mean anything? No sense, exactly. Right? It's just a piece of crap, not even worth the cost of the paper, right? So you may document all these requirements, but you must also validate it. So another task that we do is validation. Now, validation really means that we must send out our requirements document to our stakeholders, part of our management, right, or stakeholder management, part of requirements management, part of business process development, whatever you call it, part of everything, really. Why? So that the business reviews it. If they feel that we have missed one of the requirements, then they can give us feedback. We can add that requirement. If they feel that our understanding of one of the requirements is wrong, then we can correct it, right? If they feel that they have missed any of the requirements, well, that's no problem. We can add it. This is why we're gathering the requirements, right? So if we miss one of the requirements in the previous stages, in the previous session, that's okay. We can add another one, right? If they feel that they need to modify, yes, they said something, now they changed their mind, that's also okay, right? However, they must review this document and say, yes, the business analyst has captured everything that we wanted, that his understanding is the same as mine. This is what we want the development team, implementation team, whoever, right, depending on the kind of project we are doing. This is what we want to develop, correct? And yes, it meets our objectives. Are you clear? So this requirements document will serve as a contract for you, right? You will, the business unit sign off on it. This is what they want. The PMO undertakes this opportunity. Yes, so my business analyst did their task, right? This is what you said you wanted because you signed off on it. That my business analyst understanding of your requirements is correct and accurate, right? So they have something in writing that you did your job, hence they can evaluate you, right? And then we will pass on our requirements document to the development or the implementation team and get this stuff done. So the next team, right, whoever is going to do the design and the develop, whether it is an architect, right, putting together a plan for the casino, or whether it is an office architect putting together the layout of the office, or whether it is a database architect or solutions architect putting together the design of the enterprise or the solution or whatever, they know that their design should meet all your requirements, correct? Right? So it works as a contract. Now, of course, ideally, we finish our document, we send it out, people will review it, they will approve it, and you get your feedback, or they will send you feedback, you implement it, and they sign off on it. However, in real life, do you think that's how it works? Is it ever that simple? No. Okay, why? Because even if you had 3 or 4 stakeholders, always remember there may be some that are super busy, they're traveling, right? Or they're stuck in meetings, they did not get time to review your document. So you have a timeline. Remember a project plan, right? Your requirements document is due by a certain date. And you're approaching that date and they haven't even reviewed it yet. Even if you have completed your document, unless they sign off on it, you have not met your deadline. So how can you help yourself? How can you push these people along, right, so that you can meet your deadline? A couple of things. So the techniques are, you can schedule some review sessions. What that means is, if your document is due by Friday for the project plan, you should ideally send out your document the previous week, Thursday or Friday. Give them 2 days to review it. Ask them to submit their feedback by the close of business after 2 days. Right? So if you send it out on Thursday, give them Friday, right, and then Monday. Feedback is due by Monday. On Tuesday, schedule a review session. Why? Because, like I said, some may be traveling, some may be on vacation, some may not have a chance, right? Some may have totally forgotten about it, right? So, Tuesday, schedule a session. Those who have read it will have given you the feedback. And if all have read and given you feedback, then you have time, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to implement, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to add those feedback and get the signatures, right? If some of them have not reviewed it, then you block some time off on their calendar, 1 hour, right? If the document is huge, then 2 hours, 2 separate sessions, maybe one on Tuesday, another one on Wednesday, right? However you need to do it. So now these people have time blocked off on their calendar. Officially, now they can review your document. So, put together a meeting invite them to a conference room, pull up your requirements document, put it on the projector, and have everyone read through it. Walk them through the document. All right? You have their undivided attention. As they give you feedback, edit your document. Why? Because it sometimes speeds up the process. Okay? If you run out of time, you already have another hour scheduled for the following day. So you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to get it right. If most of the feedback that you receive, if you implemented that feedback right then and there, then at the end of your second session, or by the end of, or before your your document is due, you have sufficient time to get their signatures. Yes or no? So you go through, so remember, anything that is important is documented, right? Anything on the requirements document must have met these the 8 characteristics, right? Now, during that review session, if you had any prototypes, whether it was a 2D prototype, a mock-up, a 3D prototype, sample, whatever it was, architectural design, whatever it was, if you've made that, you must also have them review it, sign off that yes, this prototype is correct. Clear? Guys, I showed you the prototype of the I just made a sample of the prototype, right? So when Yadagiri, if I say that I want a smartphone that will have icons at the top, right, on my home screen, right? Well, how does it look like? I have that prototype. I built that prototype for you. Okay? Anything, guys, any kind of prototype, if you have a certain report, you say that this is how our report is going to look, right? Or these are the fields that my report will have. And then if you have a mock-up or a sample ready, then you can create those samples, right? So have them review those samples as well. If there were any conceptual models, right, that were built, any other diagrams, remember, as business analysts, what did I say? We don't draw landscapes, right, or seascapes. What do we draw? We draw requirements diagrams, right, something related to our project. So if we drew any of those diagrams or models, and a model can be anything, it can be a Gantt chart, it can be your project plan, okay? So if there was any other model, we want them to analyze those as well. They must approve that these are correct. They must also approve how will these requirements be verified. Remember we said, right, that the requirements should be, what were one of the characteristics? We listed it, right? Verified and validated. How will we tie these requirements back to the objective? How will we test that, yes, this requirement meets the objective? Okay? Yes, no, maybe. Now, once they have reviewed it all, then they will sign off on it. Once they've signed off, then our deliverable is complete. Are you clear? Okay. Now requirements, remember, part of stakeholder management, requirements management is communication. People should know how are we going to communicate, right, to them about our requirements. They should all have an understanding. Now part of it is standards. The PMO sets down the policies that we will follow the project life cycle, or we will follow this SDLC approach. That within this SDLC approach we will do, or this project life cycle, this is the template, the requirements document that we will follow, right? There will be weekly status updates, there will be project status updates, there will be this and that. So there is always a communication plan. What will we do? What are the different, how will we gather these requirements? Pretty much, right? That these are the different times that we will have some review sessions, we will have some workshops, we will have some, brainstorming sessions, whatnot. Right? So the different business stakeholders know what to expect. Right? Are you clear? You have to enforce this at every phase of the project. What is upcoming? So when you finish one phase, right, what did I say? At the end of each phase there is an evaluation, right? So you talk about the evaluation and then you also say, so now we're officially in the next phase. In this phase we will be doing, and then you list what are the things that you will be doing, right? And how do you plan to do it? You've got to communicate to them that, we will be scheduling these sessions with you. We will need you to block off some time on your calendar. We will need such and such, right? Then around such and such time, we expect to have such and such document complete. Yes or no? Do you think we should let people know what the expectation is from them in this next phase, or what should they expect from us, right? This is part of stakeholder management. All right. Remember, requirements is not just requirements. You manage requirements throughout the entire project life cycle. So you do requirements communication throughout the life cycle. Okay? Everyone clear? All right. Now we talked about, if you remember, we talked about enterprise analysis, right? Look here, what does it say? Understand the needs of businesses as a whole, its strategic direction, and identifying the initiatives that will allow a business to meet these strategic goals. So we had some things listed here, right? These are the different tasks, subtasks that we must do as part of enterprise analysis. Now, how do we do those tasks? First, what are the techniques that we follow? The first one is we do we do a PESTLE analysis. Okay. PESTLE stands for PESTLE, political, economic, sociological, technological, legal, and environmental. What is driving this project? Okay. What are the reasons we are doing this project? Is it because of the political environment? It could be within the company, right? It could be bigger. It could be, state or federal, right? That there are political pressures. Are you clear? That we are doing it because this is the direction the company leadership has changed its course, right? So when BP changed, had a couple of different projects going on last year, it was because of political pressure, right? Because of the Gulf spill. They had to undertake a couple of different initiatives or projects because of political reasons, right? There was audit projects, political reasons. Yes or no? Now again, there are some projects, right, that we are doing because of the economy. Why? We want to increase. Yadagiri, you should know what is driving this project. This is background information for you, right? This is why these are the questions that you should be asking your stakeholder. So what are the reasons, what is driving this project? You should be able to figure out which of these buckets does that reason that was provided by the stakeholder, which one fits. There's logical progression here, all right? So bear with me. Sometimes we have projects, right? You can't increase revenue in current economy, can you? Is it easy to just increase profit? Yadagiri, there is no knowledge that you can have because the political environment, every company, every domain can be different. At each time, it is a bouncing ball, right? You don't know, so there's nothing that you can know. It is always as it relates to that point and for that company, right? So what happened with BP did not happen with Chevron and Shell, did it? So you don't have to know the political climate as such. But you've got to figure out what is driving it. Is it politics? Now, you're not documenting it anywhere, but it is more for you to be able to process the information. Okay? Okay, we're getting there, Yadagiri. I haven't even gotten to legal and technology. Like I said, bear with me. Alright? I'll explain it all, guys. If it's there on my slide deck, I will explain it. Don't jump. Okay? So economic. Is it possible to increase revenue in today's time, increase profit? Yes and no. Right? You can't charge the customer anymore. However, Nehal, you're right in a way. However, if I made myself more efficient, if I reduced my waste, do you think I could increase my revenue? Yes or no? Possible, right? So sometimes you do certain projects because of the economical reasons, because it is going to bring you more revenue, or it is going to increase your profit margin, right? It is more about economics than anything else. Okay? Then again, there are some projects that you do for sociological reasons, right? The way it can affect a society or an organization. So again, if we go back to the BP example, they did certain projects, right? So as to bring their value up, right? So society can look at how, or especially the state of Louisiana, can see how committed and dedicated British Petroleum is. Yes or no? There were some projects that they started, right? non-IT projects as well. They helped, if I'm not mistaken, they did a couple of different things to help with tourism, to help with, finding people who lost their livelihoods and jobs, especially the fishermen, right? And they had projects that they reimbursed money for people who were affected, especially restaurants that were impacted because of all the seafood, right? The cost of seafood going up. All of that seafood was tainted. So they had other projects, sociological reasons. Same goes. Facebook. Do you think Facebook, some of the projects that it has, is it all economical, or are some of them sociological? Just the Facebook, the launch of Facebook, do you think it was economic reasons that Mark Zuckerberg started it? Right? He started it for sociological reasons, right? So that people can connect. Right? So some projects are done for the society. You're doing it for sociological reasons. Right? Some for technology. Apple, all of their projects is for technology, right? They're always striving to improve their technology. Yes or no? Now there are others too. I mean, Sony and HP, right? Okay. Then we have legal. Every year, have you heard there's a new law being passed? So we have a healthcare law, right, that was passed. Do you think that changes the way our insurance works? Yes. If it changes the way our insurance works, do you think the software that calculates our insurance and does our coverage and pays our medical providers, that must also be changed? So the processes must be changed and the software must also be changed, correct? Because of a new regulation. Right? So there can be IT and non-IT projects because of legal reasons, right? And lastly, environmental. Have you seen some of the plastic bottled water companies? Some of them have said eco-friendly. Why? Because they're using lesser plastic. Have you come across any of those? Any of you have seen some companies have totally gone, they don't do paper bills anymore. Only e-bills. They go green, that's right. How did they do that? It required a process change. It required an IT change, right? But it was done for environmental reasons. Do you think they gained any? They started making any revenue because they went green? Not necessarily. That project itself may have cost them $500,000. They may never, even if they started using, they don't have to print paper anymore, to print paper bills anymore. They may never recover $500,000 or $5 million, all right? However, it was done for environmental reasons, that's right. That was not the objective. The objective was not to make gain or profit out of it, but it was done for environmental reasons. Okay? Right. Yadagi, yes it is. Okay, it is not exactly domain specific. Well, yes and no. Right? Why? Because sometimes you may upgrade your servers, your technology within the company, even if you are in the energy industry. Old technology has to be, you have to replace your old servers. Have you seen how our social security numbers and all, it's old technology, right? So how would that be domain specific, Yadagiri? This is a technique that you can apply in any domain. It is project related more. The project can be a HR project, it could be a domain specific, right? Core business project, it could be anything. Alright, Yadagiri? It is very basic. It is Don't overanalyze, okay? It is very specific to the project. Now, HR applications, right? They may want to go and they may be because of legal reasons. They may also be upgrading their systems for political reasons, right? They have a new CEO of the company who doesn't like the way HR works right now. And this company could be, that's right, government project. So what is the domain here? What does that have to do with HR? Right? So it's not exactly domain specific. It can be, but it's not guaranteed. It is more project specific. All right? So once you understand what is driving the project, you know what is the problem. Yes or no? You know who to talk to. Does it make sense? Right? What kind of research do you want to do? Yes or no, guys? If you know that we are doing this for a profit, well, don't you want to know how much profit are we trying to make? Because if you don't know what kind of profit we're looking at, what is our target, how do you know what your return on investment, whether your return on investment is good enough or not? Can you do that? No. If you don't know, what is the reason why we're simply changing all our applications, insurance applications? Why? If you don't know the reason behind it, how can you tell what is your scope? What else needs to be changed? Right? So you have to go talk to somebody in the legal department and understand the implications of that new healthcare law, right? And what is it doing right now, and processes and tools, right? And how will those processes change? What does it mean to you? Are you clear? So pestle analysis is really your starting point when you want to do your enterprise analysis. Okay? Now, once you've figured out what is the driver, then next thing you've got to ask is, well, what is our mission here? Right? What are the objectives that I'm trying to meet? Because remember, healthcare law, right? There are maybe 100 changes that need to be done. Now, not all of those 100 changes are going to be one project, right? It could be broken up into 5 different projects. Yes or no? So what is your portion of it? Very project specific, right? What are your objectives? Not so, yes, what are the overall missions, right? But once you understand the big umbrella, the big picture, then you've got to look at what is my objective? What is it that I am trying to do with this project? What am I trying to accomplish? Are you clear? Once you have that, then you need to understand how will you get this accomplished, right? IT project, non-IT project. What are your options? Remember we said we figure out what are the options that will apply while we were thinking of enterprise analysis so that we can do a feasibility study. Right? So now we think of the options to meet these objectives. And lastly, how are you going to put these options into action? What are the tactics? Right? Yes or no? So this analysis is called MOST, Mission, Objectives, Strategies and Tactics. So once you've done your pestle, then you do your MOST analysis. Both of these are part of your enterprise analysis. Alright? Are you clear? Okay. Now once you have done that, remember you still have to do your requirements planning and management, right? You've got to figure that out as well, right? So Now you've got to think, well, I'm going to go into requirements analysis in the next phase. What techniques, requirement analysis or requirements gathering techniques should I use, right? How will you figure out which is the best approach to do? You will do a SWOT analysis. Now the beauty of SWOT analysis is that you can do it on yourself. You can do a SWOT analysis of the project. You can do a SWOT analysis for a stakeholder. Okay? For example, if you want to do it on yourself, right, you do it first on your strengths. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What are my strengths? Oh, well, I can manage teams, right? I'm really good with 10 people in a room and facilitating a meeting, getting everyone to talk. Right? So those are the advantages. This is something that I do really well. This is my strength. My weakness is I'm not too good with conflict, which means that if I have so many people in the room and I can get everyone to talk, however, when we come across a tricky patch, right? Two people in conflict, if they don't want to cooperate with each other, then how do I resolve it? I don't want this meeting to blow up in my face. So that is my weakness. How do I overcome that weakness? Now, either I can work hard at it, right? I can try better, or I can come up with a mitigation plan. I can have my project manager or my sponsor in the meeting, right? Or somebody that can help me moderate it. Are you clear? Now, opportunities. If I went with the approach that I have chosen, right, I would really want to do it in a workshop, then what are my opportunities? What are the benefits? Well, I can get all my requirements in half the time. However, what are my threats? What are my roadblocks, obstacles? Well, biggest thing is, if I don't get it, then I really don't have time. I'm going to miss my deadline. You must know, right, where you stand. Because this will ultimately tell you if your threat is bigger than your strength, right, and your weakness, and you can't overcome your weakness, then is that the good approach? Do you think if your weakness and the threats are really overpowering, then really do you think you should go with requirements workshop? With scheduling a requirements workshop? No, right? So you can do it on yourself. You can do it for the project as well. Well, what are the strengths of the project? The stakeholders, they are really knowledgeable, right? What are the weaknesses? Well, the biggest weakness here is that two people, they don't want to talk to each other, right? Now remember, you're doing this all by yourself. You're not putting it down on paper. There's some negativity. Some people don't like this project, right? Why? Because it's being done for political reasons, right? So people are not really happy about it. But they have to do it, right? So that can be a weakness. What are the opportunities? If we were to do it right, what do we hope to gain? Threats. What are our biggest roadblocks? Once you identify your roadblocks, you've got to figure out how can I take care of them? What can I do about them so that they don't hinder our project, right? The same analysis can be done on your stakeholder. Well, what is the biggest strength of the stakeholder? Lots of knowledge. Weakness. Well, this one really clams up, does not want to talk in a group environment, or this one really likes to talk, right? He or she dominates the entire conversation. Opportunity, of course, we get to learn a lot. Threat. The conversation can get so sidetracked. While it's a lot of valuable information, it's not going to get me my requirements in time. So what do? Right? You understand? So you do this analysis. You can do it at any point of the project. It doesn't have to be while you're only in the enterprise analysis phase or the requirements gathering phase or any other point. You can do it whenever you feel like you've got to strategize. You've got to come up with, you've got to figure out which technique is best. All right? How should you proceed further? So one of the things that we typically do, even while we're thinking about requirements planning and management, right, is do this planning. before we get into our requirements gathering phase. Are you clear so far? So this is one technique. Of course, requirements gathering, what were the techniques that we talked about? Brainstorming, requirements workshop, observation, prototyping, blah, 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 right? Then we talked about requirements analysis. What were the techniques? Classifying, requirements negotiation, yes or no? Prototype, conceptual models, right? Documentation, right? What are the techniques? You can put together your documents in a text form, in a matrix form, models, diagrams. Validation techniques, you conduct review sessions, right? Yes or no? Okay. So these are some of the techniques that we learned today. Now let's go over, we talked about requirements, right? Requirements is anything, it's a capability or condition needed by the stakeholder. And I've already said business requirements, functional requirements, non-functional, technical, user, implementation, right? We talked about these, right? So some examples of each of these requirements. Business requirement, this is your official definition of a business requirement. I'm not going to read it out loud for you guys. You will have PowerPoint slides. You can use any of these definitions, okay? Functional requirement. Functional requirement can also be, if you're looking at a website, customers should be able to search for a product by typing a keyword. Customers should be able to search for a product by typing in an item ID. Okay? Those are functional requirements. It's the functionality of the website, functionality of the system. Now, functional requirements only apply to IT projects. You cannot have functional requirements for non-IT projects. Okay? Those requirements are called non-functional requirements. Those are process requirements. Are you clear so far? And functional requirements really mean functions or feature of the software or application being developed. So you cannot group reporting requirements as a functionality. Reporting is not a functionality. Okay? Are you clear? Reporting is more of a data requirement, right? It is not a functionality that you build. Unless you're building a reporting tool, then it is a functional requirement, but it is a tool that you're building, it's not a report that you're building. Are you clear? User requirements, remember what did we say? Right. It has to be fast. Have you seen when you do a Google search, the search results, Google says this search was completed in 0.04 seconds. Have you seen that message? Why? Because I want my website to be really fast, right? I want it to be secure. I want it to be interactive. I want it to be user-friendly, very easy. Yes or no? Same goes. Will you ever buy a TomTom for your car that is not user-friendly, very technical? Too many steps to go through. Do you think you'll buy a TomTom for the car? No, right? Will you buy something that's not accurate? Will you buy a calculator that is not always that does not calculate correctly? So accuracy, performance, speed, secure, all of these, user-friendliness, these are user requirements. Okay, reliability. Non-functional. Now sometimes your user requirements are grouped with your process requirements, and then they're called quality of service. Now typically non-functional are audit, right? We need to store this information for 7 years for audit, right? Or for compliance requirements, procurement requirements. Those are non-functional. but you don't know where to group them. So it's pretty much, or most of the time, you'll find the user requirements and the quality of service requirements, because there's a gray area, right? PCI, when I say that I want my information to be secure, what does it mean? If it has my social security number or my credit card information, right, I want it to be secure, which is also the same as PCI compliance requirements, right, or audit requirements. There are government regulations that this information must be secure. So they fall under the same, they fall under the gray area, right? You don't know whether you should call it a user requirement or a non-functional requirement. So they lump them all together as quality of service requirements. Okay? Saida, what you can do is, if you've already signed up with Dantec, you will get a link to the blog. When you get the link to the blog, you also have access to our online library. The PowerPoints are posted there. It really depends. Have you already signed up for the classes, Saida? And that is why, when you sign up, then Balwant will send you the link will give you access to the blog. Okay? And all the recordings are also posted on the blog. So you have access both ways. If you want to pause the recording and print out the slide, you can do it like that. Or if you want to go and download the PowerPoint, yes, he will give you access. So let him know that you want access to it. If that is what he's told you, Saida, I don't know. I don't know the payment details of it. I don't know if he's giving you just today's session for free, or if he's giving you the slide deck for free or whatever. I don't know those details. Okay? Implementation. How many of you, when you were trying to install a software, right, have seen a message saying checking system compatibility, system requirements? So it also happened when some of you downloaded the WebEx for the first time. What does it mean? That this software it requires a certain environment, right? Can only be supported at this level or this platform or compatibility. That's right. And that compatibility is your implementation requirements. In order for this software to work, we need to have X, Y, and Z. Whatever Internet Explorer should be 7 or up, right? Version 7 or up. Or Microsoft version should be this or up. Yes or no? Okay? Your Java version should be such and such or more. Right? So whatever it is, that is implementation requirements. Now sometimes implementation is referred to for only IT projects. But many a times the word implementation is used loosely for non-IT projects also. So in order to have this in place, right, or to go live with this non-IT project, we also need to have such and such. And they call it implementation. However, the word implementation and functional are really, technically, they are IT terms. Okay, everyone? Okay so far? All right. So with that, guys, we have come to an end to today's session. All right, you've learned some of the analysis techniques. You have learned the BA deliverables, some of the tasks and techniques. We will continue to add more, but remember, next week onward, we will focus strictly on IT projects. So all the analysis techniques that you've learned so far will apply. Remember, what applies to non-IT projects apply to IT as well. It's just the other ways is not true, right? What applies to IT does not always apply to non-IT. Saida, you are more than welcome. Did you enjoy today's session? All right, great. Great. So guys, at this point, anybody have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Pooja, as you told us about the SWOT and the other styles, for the documentation gathering as well as the requirement gathering, okay? Is that compulsory that we should have just the knowledge or we should have the full fulfillment in that?
See, the SWOT analysis, they apply to the project, right? Apply to the situation you are in. So when you're doing that analysis, you must look at everything, right? There is no specific knowledge that you can get. How would you get it? For SWOT analysis or question analysis, I mean, unless it is a regulation by the state, right, or the government, there is nothing for you to read up. How would you find more? You'd have to ask your stakeholders. That's the only way to get more information. Alright, so there is no, you can't just say that I need more information. Of course, remember your information, right, your background, this is all background information, right, so that you understand the project properly, right? You understand the scope of the project properly. So it is all related to the project. You've got to delve further. If you think that you need to learn more, then you have to ask more questions.
Okay.
You've got to ask your stakeholders. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah. SWOT analysis, Yadagri, this is my experience. As a full-time employee, right, if you're doing a SWOT analysis, we rarely ever document it. We can talk to our managers when we give our status updates, right? We based on our SWOT analysis is how we put together our status updates, right? Weekly project status updates. However, as a consultant, there are many companies where you do your SWOT analysis and you present it to your stakeholder or to your business sponsor to support the techniques that you are going with, all right? To support the approach that you have taken, right? So yes, you are right. It happens. It again depends on company to company, right? That's okay, Nitya. If you have to drop off, that's fine. We are done, right? We are on the we're about to just wrap up. So any other questions? Now, if you do have questions, guys, remember, the recorded version will be on the blog in the next 15-20 minutes. That's what Balwant will do. Okay?
Okay. And Pooja, one more thing, please. As you told us the last time in the demo, once I was there, are you there?
See, the demo is a demo. We just talk about, so you can check out.
I'm just asking. I have a question that we should go for the entry level after that training. Okay.
I would.
So in entry level, they also train you, right?
I'm sorry, I'm training you for the entry level, right? In fact, that's how we all start. When you start, you would start at entry level. I don't recommend any of you lie and say you have 5 years of experience, because if it is your first job, right, there is no way. The maturity of your documents, even if you do all my case studies, it will not be the same thing as as what you'd expect from a professional who's been in the industry working as a business analyst for 5 years. All right, so if the employer covers it all for the training, yes. No, employer. Okay,
no, I was just asking that